All right, hello, my fellow coder. Welcome back to the FreshVotes series, which is a series where we are diving into how to build a Java web app from scratch, leveraging Spring Boot and other technologies. Welcome to this next lesson. So we are on video number 25 or something, 26, 27, I don't even know, maybe 23. Somewhere in the 20s, and for this one, what we've done already, if this is like the one of the first videos that you're strolling off the street and watching, I'll give you a recap. So we've done a fair bit of logic around our application in terms of being able to log into it and creating an account. So if we go to the localhost login, you see that you have a login page. You can click on create an account and actually create and register account, name, email address, password, confirm password. I already have an account, so I can log in. I think it's password 123, although I'd like to change that because that's kind of annoying to type in all the time. And then we're brought to this page where we can then log out, or we can click on create a product. When we click on create a product, a lot of stuff happens, but really nothing useful happens. It just brings us to a new page called /products, which just says product, and that's about it. So that's as far as we've gotten thus far. In this video, we are going to elaborate on this create a product button and the flow that it takes us through, and actually have it create a real product in our database, and we'll see how far we can get from there. First things first, though, I want to change that password. I don't like what I'm using anymore. I think I have a test somewhere in here. FreshVotes application tests? No. User details service? Yes. So side note, again, if you haven't seen this before, I encrypt all the passwords in the database. So if you go to the database, I have a FreshVotes database, and this will all be created for you within the code itself if you run this code off of GitHub. I'll try to include the GitHub link in the comments or the description. If you select start from users, you can see that the users in the database, the passwords are encrypted. Right? This is not what I type in. I type in password 123, and that evaluates to this big, string here that you see in front of you. So this is we have a little test case that will encrypt it for us. So generate that encryption string. So I'm going to just have ASDF as a password just because I'm lazy, and I'm going to encrypt that. So I'm going to run this as a JUnit test. Ooh, I need to save it first. Yes, save it first, and then that will spit out this string, which I will copy and paste into my database. So I'll overwrite what I have there for the Trevor@CraftyCoder user, and I will apply that, and it'll run an update statement, and it'll update that password for me. So now when I log in, if I do ASDF and say log in, it allows me to log in. If I type in password 123, which is what I used to have, it's going to say nope, failed to log in. So just to prove to you that I actually changed the password. So now let's go into create a product. So let's follow that flow that I was talking about. So what happens is when you click on that button, this actually posts a form. It does a post, which means create. Post, an HTTP post is sort of another way to say create. HTTP get means read. HTTP put means update, and HTTP delete means delete. So post means create. So if I post to /products, I'm going to create a product. So what I should really do here is create a new product. So let's go ahead and do that. Let's do product, call it whatever we like, equals new product. Okay, and this word product here is a class that we've actually created already. It's called a domain object. So if we go into our domain our package here, you see we have a product.java. So this represents an actual product. So what is a product? It is annotated with at entity, which means it is a database table. So if we go to our database, we will see that there is a product table that has an ID, a name, a user ID as a foreign key, and published as a bit, meaning true or false, whether or not this product is published. Okay, and there is also a relationship with features, but the product class does not bear the burden of the foreign key. That's just the way databases work. I don't want to get into that right now, but that's, like I said, just the way it works. So the feature table will be bearing the product ID burden. So feature has a product ID foreign key. Okay, just like product has a user foreign key, which is in the user object. Which again, I don't want to get into that. So we're going to create a new product, which really just means we're going to start the process of creating a new row in the product table. Okay, if we're inserting a new row, we're creating a new product. So, okay, let's create a new product. So what goes into this product? Okay, do we need to say product.set anything? Well, let's take a look. Set features. Well, we don't have any features yet. The whole point of FreshVotes is to say, hey, I've got a product and I would like you, the users of the product, to request features. Okay, because me, the owner of the product, might want to enhance the product with new features. But I don't know what features to add. You tell me what features you'd like me to add, right? That's kind of the concept of this. And then people can upvote and downvote it, kind of like Reddit, where you can post articles and people will upvote and downvote. Well, instead of Reddit articles, we're doing FreshVotes products, or features, sorry. So articles or posts in Reddit are to Reddit what features are to FreshVotes. That was confusing. So anyway, we don't have any features yet. We have a brand new product. There's going to be no features, so we don't have to worry about that. Do we want to set the ID? Well, actually, no. We don't want to set the ID. We want our database to do that for us. MySQL will set an ID. And believe it or not, with the Hibernate system that we're using Hibernate, which will help us to persist the data to the database without really having to write a whole lot of SQL code at all, or scripts. Hibernate does not want you to set an ID. When the ID is not set, in other words, when the ID is null, and we perform a save to the database, that tells Hibernate that this should be a new row of data. It should be an insert statement. So when there's no ID and we save, that means insert. When there is an ID assigned here and we save, that means update. Okay, so the save method, which we'll get to soon, the save method that we're going to invoke has two purposes. It does either insert or update, depending on whether or not an ID is set in the object, the row of data that we are inserting. So no, we don't need to set an ID either. Name. So we could set a name. We could have like a default name. Let's leave it blank for now. Published, I feel like I'm confident that I can say publish should be set to false, okay? Because we don't want to publish a brand new product right away, okay? So that sort of feels like a good default to have, okay? And user, absolutely, we need to set a user. This product, when it's first created and saved into the database, needs to be owned by a user, because a user is the one who said that they want to create this product. So how do we set the user? Where do we get the user? Okay, this is a good question. I don't know if I've touched on that yet in terms of... No, I haven't. So with the beauty of Spring Security and Spring Framework and all these Spring technologies, it's actually quite easy to get access to a user. There's just one little thing that you need to remember, but we'll get into that. So we can actually just say user here in terms of parameters that we want to pass to this create product method, and the user is coming from FreshVotes domain. So this is actually one of our objects. If I hit F3 on this guy, we'll see it'll go in and open up the user class. This is our class. This is the class that we created. This is our user. But I don't believe this is enough to make it work. We'll see. I'll put a breakpoint in here and see if this works. I'm pretty sure I'm going to need an annotation here. So let me put it in a breakpoint. Let me stop my server and start it in debug mode. Start the FreshVotes application in debug mode. And I'm going to open up a can of... Oh, I just got water everywhere. Sparkling water. Good stuff. So let's go in and refresh. It's going to log me out because I rebooted the server. Let me click on create a product. It should go into that breakpoint. Yes, it's gone into the breakpoint. Let me hover over user. Yeah, username is null, products is null, so it's not setting it properly. This is just a blank user. So yeah, we do need more information here. We need to tell it more. And what we need to do is annotate this user that we're injecting with a specific annotation called authentication principal. So authentication principal comes from Spring Security. Okay, it is an annotation that we need to put in front of the user parameter that we're passing into a method. So the use case here is anytime you have a method that needs to use a user, okay, that needs to get the actual user that's logged in. This is the user that's been logged in. Anytime we need to reference a user that's been logged in, you can inject it right into a method via the method parameters using the @authentication principal annotation. Okay, so this has to go with the user object that has to be a specific type of user. It has to be a whatchamacallit user. Where is my custom security user? So it has to be it has to implement user details. Okay, and this one does. The user that we are using in this case does indeed implement user details, because that's what we created and put into our session when we logged it. We've already gone over that code. Don't worry about it. So at authentication principal is the magic annotation that will make this all work. So let me reboot my server so I get back into debug mode so I can prove to you that it's actually going to inject a user. So let me log in, create a product. It'll hit that breakpoint. I will hover over user, and look at that. It's populated with stuff now. So we have our username, any products assigned to it, a password, a name. This is perfect. This is exactly what we wanted to see. So that, without doing much heavy lifting, we've got a user. And now I will caution you. This is the one little twist here. You might think that that's enough. You might think that that's all you need to do. And we might be able to get away with this, but I think usually what we need to do is, this is not a user, this user is not the one that's coming directly from the database. Okay? In other words, Hibernate, it's not linked with Hibernate specifically yet. Okay? And this is sort of, Hibernate is tricky here. So oftentimes what we need to do is, even though we have the user and it looks fine, it looks great, and why can't we just inject it into the product here and just save it? Oftentimes that's not enough, and it will complain when we try to do a save. Okay, but we'll see. We'll see what happens. Hopefully what I'm trying to do is I want to recreate the error that you're going to see, so that you see the error and you remember, that's right, Trevor told me that I need to load it from the database. Anyway, again, we'll get there when we get there. Should be soon. So that should be enough for the product. Is there any other sets? No. So there's like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 things we could set. 2 of them we know we can set. The other 3 we'll set later. We'll allow the person who's logged in to populate the other values on a form in HTML. So we've created the product. Great. But we haven't done anything with this. We want to save it to our database, right? We want to create the product, which means we want to save it to the database. How do we save it to the database? Well, repositories are what we use to save to databases. But right now, all we have is a user repository, and what we're dealing with is a product. So we want a product repository, but one doesn't exist yet. Well, that's okay. Let's create one. Let me right-click and say New. Repositories are interfaces because we are leveraging Spring Data, specifically Spring Data JPA. And the way that Spring Data works is it uses interfaces. So we'll create an interface called Product Repository. You can call it whatever you like, but I like to have a consistent naming convention. So I put the name of the, essentially the entity that we're going to be saving and doing the CRUD operations with. And then I follow it with repository to say this is an object that deals with database stuff. And what we do is we extend the JPA repository. Okay, again, this comes from Spring Data JPA specifically. So Spring Data JPA brings in this beautiful interface called JPA repository, which needs 2 things from you. It needs a type, and it needs the ID, the type of the ID. So the type here is, what are we saving? And what we're saving is a product. Okay, that's what we're doing the CRUD operations with. It wants to know what's the object, what's the table that we want to be doing the CRUD operations with. Well, in this case, it's the product, right? The product repository is going to be saving and reading and writing and all that stuff with the product entity. And then what is the ID? What is the type of the ID for that entity? So if I go into product, the type for the ID is long. Okay, that's all it needs. It needs a type for the ID, and it needs the entity. Done. That's it. With this, seemingly one line of code, we now have all the CRUD operations that we need to go forward. So great, we've got a CRUD repository. So now let's use it. So inside of our controller, we could do the save. And now normally this, to be good here, we should take this logic out and put this into a service layer. But I'll do that maybe in the next video. We'll do some refactoring and we'll put in some, maybe some unit tests or something like that. We'll see. So for now, just to get things done, I'm going to create a product repository as a field, product repository. Call it product repo for short. And I'm going to auto wire this bad boy in. So the auto wired annotation will bring in the instantiated repository into this controller. In other words, Spring is going to be managing this. It's going to be instantiating the implementation of this, because you can't instantiate an interface. There will be a concrete class that will be instantiated that will represent the product repository, and then Spring will manage that for us and wire it in so that this product repo is not null. So that's what Spring does for us. That's what AutoWire does. As long as your setup is correct and you have the repositories in the right place in terms of packages, everything should work just fine out of the box. So if you follow my convention, my structure here, if you put the application and well, servlet initializer, but if you put the FreshVotes application in the root package, com.freshvotes, everything within com.freshvotes should be automatically scanned by Spring, and it should pick up the repository and put it inside of what's called the Spring application context, such that we can auto wire it in. Anyway, I know it's a lot of jargon for what we're doing, but trust me, this will work. So product repo, now we can say product repo dot, look at all the stuff that we can do, right? I didn't write any of this code. This is all boilerplate code that was written for me. I don't have to do anything. It's lovely. So I want to do a save, and I want to save an entity. What entity do I want to save? I want to save the product entity, okay? And now what happens? The save returns a product back. So it returns the product. Essentially what it's going to do is it's going to return the saved version of this, and that saved version is also going to have an updated ID. So we're actually going to have an ID for this product. So I can just assign that right back into itself. I mean, I don't have to, but I could. I typically do because I'm lazy. I just say product equals blah. Now, then you can put that on the model, right? If you wanted to. You can say model.put. Oh, I need to... actually, no, we don't want to do that. I completely lied to you. This is a post, and we're doing a redirect, so you can't have a model here because we're redirecting. What we can do is we can redirect to a different endpoint. So we know what endpoint to redirect to now because we have the product ID back from the save. At least we should. So when it does the insert into the database, it will give us an ID because we've inserted into the database. The database generates an ID, and the save method gives us back. It returns back a product, okay, which is right here, which will have that new ID that was just saved. So now we can use that new ID and say, hey, instead of redirecting to products, redirect to products / the product ID. You see what I'm doing there? So that's a good convention to follow. The pluralized entity, okay, in this case, products, could be users, could be features, could be votes, could be comments, whatever the entity is. In this case, it's products. Products / the ID of that product means get me this particular product. So don't get me all the products, just get me this one product and show me that product. Okay, so we're going to redirect to that endpoint, which it doesn't exist yet. That endpoint doesn't exist. All we have is a get products. So we need to create an endpoint for get products / a product ID, right? So /1 /2 / 82,700. So how do we represent this? How do we have a products / a product ID? Well, you put it in curly brackets and name it whatever you like. I'm going to name it product ID. Okay, this is a placeholder for the product that's going to be fetched from this whatever URL that you are working with. So now public string, we'll say get product. Okay, this was get products plural. This is get product singular. And then we need to assign a variable for this product ID. We need to give it a path variable. Okay, I know I'm going pretty fast here because we're getting long on time. This represents, the path variable is, we want to be able to read this in and use this product ID. Okay, so for now, let me just do that. Let me just say return product. I don't want to get too far into the weeds. I'll explain this in a lot more detail later, okay? I don't want to get into this just yet. So let me just do this, and we're just doing that because we sort of have to, because we're redirecting to it. I just want to show you that we can redirect to that. We're going to be elaborating on this in the next video, but I'll leave it there for now as is. what I really want to show you is that we can save to a database, okay? Although I think this is going to fail because of the Hibernate trick thingy that we need to do that I explained previously. Yeah, let's try that. Let's do product.save. Let's refresh the server or reboot the server in debug mode, and we will execute the save, and we'll see what happens. Again, I'm not confident that it'll work, but I am confident that I know the solution if it does not work. So let's go ahead and log in. ASDF is my password. We'll click on create a product. It'll hit my breakpoint. So we're going to go in. We set publish as false. We set the user, which we do have a user. It is populated. Boom. So the product now, if we look at the product, has a user, which is a custom security user, and it has published equals false. And if I hit F6 to step over, it's going to try to insert, but I think it's going to fail. We'll see. I could be wrong. Okay, there you go. It did work. So that's nice. Sometimes we need to load up the... sometimes this is not connected to Hibernate properly, and Hibernate does not recognize this, and it gives us an error. So that's good. It's good that it figured that out. Perhaps that's a new thing in Spring it was able to figure out. In any case, there's the insert statement. And if I say return products.getProductID, basically it's just going to reload the same thing as before, the same page. But the difference is, look at the URL. The URL says product/1. Okay, that 1 represents a product ID, right? And so that's pretty exciting. So we can actually go to our database and say select star from product and say go. And there it is, product ID 1. There's no name for it. It's associated with user ID 1, which is true. That's my user ID that I'm logged in with. Published is 0. Cool. It looks like it works. And then we can prove that by going back and saying create a product again. And that should create product number 2. So as you can see, I should have showed you, product right now does not have an ID. ID is null. But when you do the save, it inserts and it will get an ID, and this save returns a new product. And look, you see it's in red. Features are updated with, again, nothing. But ID is 2. See, more importantly, it sets an ID there. I'm not sure why it updated features, probably because, anyway, I don't want to get into the weeds there, but it set ID 2, right? And then it's going to redirect to product get ID, which is going to be number 2. So if I hit play, we're going to see product/2, okay? So now these are endpoints that I can actually go to. I can go to product/1, and it loads up. You know, again, it looks the same, but this gives us the ability to look at individual products with HTTP GET requests, okay? And to prove to you that this, well, I guess I can go to /3, it's going to work as well, but that's, anyway, let's ignore that. We'll that's because of the way we implemented this here. I left it very basic, so we'll need to implement something properly here. But again, we'll do that in the next video. This has gone on too long. Sorry about that. So in the next video, we will elaborate on our GET endpoint for the /product/product ID. And I'll show you how to load products from a database, and we'll eventually hit that pesky issue where sometimes you need to reload from the database in order to save and so on and so forth. We'll get there. So thanks so much for watching. Take care of yourself. Can't wait to see you in the next video. As always, happy learning, and bye for now.